Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight for some meditation as well as a Dharma talk from Bhante Suddhāso. So, good evening so far to Jens, who's joining in from very near instead of far, as well as to Ron and Robin. And good evening to other friends who are watching. So at this time, I'll pass things over to Bhante Suddhāso, who guide us in some meditation.
Okay, so you can start by getting into meditation posture. So of course, it's best to sit in a stable, upright position. If you're capable of sitting in the full lotus or half lotus position, that's best. Otherwise, any kind of upright position is good. If sitting is a struggle, you can also assume a standing position. Again, as long as you're upright and you allow the body to be as still as possible. Take a moment to make sure that your posture is nice and even and balanced. You're not leaning to one side or the other. Making sure your weight is evenly balanced on your tailbone so that there's no pressure on any nerves. Once you're comfortable with your position, take a few long, slow, deep breaths. With each breath, letting all the tension melt from your body and mind. Letting go of whatever you've been thinking about during the day, whatever activities or conversations you've been involved in. Just letting all of it drop as though none of it matters at all. Just meaningless stories of no interest at all. Just let them fade away. And if those stories remain echoing in the back of the mind, just don't take any interest in them. Pay no attention to them. Just let them be what they are. Instead, focus on not producing any new thought, not producing any new movement of mind. Don't worry about any old momentum in the mind. It will fade away on its own. Just don't create any new movement of mind. Bringing full attention to this body and mind. Full attention to the experience of this moment. Looking closely without desire or aversion. Just looking closely. at the feeling of the body and the feeling of the mind. And where is the feeling of the body? It's in the mind. So we only need to look at one thing, the feeling of the mind. That includes the body, it includes sensation, it includes all the activities, vibrations, motions of mind. Just closely watching the feeling of the mind. Hold your attention steady. There's no need to move attention throughout the domain of the mind. If you just hold attention steady, the entire mind domain comes sharply into view. So let your attention rest still, sharp, bright, and clear in the midst of the domain of mind. If thoughts of the past drift through the mind, just closely watch as it comes and goes without getting involved in it. If thoughts of the future drift through the mind, just closely watch as they come and go, never moving the mind from its place, never moving attention from the center point of the mental domain, not jumping up to greet new objects, not chasing after departing objects, just holding attention still and alert as things come and go in the mind. You may start to slowly become aware of the vast, warm, peaceful field of the mind. That vast open space which is not disturbed by whatever passes through it. That vast open field which knows only stillness, stillness unaffected by motion. Undifferentiated, not broken by objects. You can let that vast, serene warmth dominate the mind. Like being in a warm, dark room where you feel completely safe, with nothing to do, no burdens, no responsibilities, no pain, no pressure, no need to be anyone, no need to do anything or say anything. You can just relax into that warm, gentle, serene spaciousness. And in this vast, open, peaceful spaciousness of mind, there is no body, there is no sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no thoughts, no emotions, no me, no mine, no this, no that. And if we try to bring any of those things with us, we will not be able to immerse fully. So let it all drop, dropping perception of body, dropping perceptions of sensation, perceptions of me and mine, relaxing into that warm, peaceful spaciousness of mind. You can release your posture and let your body and mind relax. Just enjoying the peacefulness that comes after a period of meditation.
So thank you, Bhante, for guiding us in that meditation. And welcome to some more friends joining in. So hello, Melinda and AP. So tonight, Bhante Suddhāso will be talking about karma, which I'm sure everyone is excited to hear about. So if you have questions at any time, feel free to type them into the live chat and we'll address them at the end of the talk. So I'll pass things over to Bhante Suddhāso for Dhamma talk.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good evening, friends. Feels like a while since I've given a talk, though I know it's not been that long. But one of the characteristics that comes from practicing a lot of meditation, especially of the sort that we were just doing, is that one's sense of time shifts quite dramatically. So something that happened a short while ago can seem like a long time ago. And something that seemed like a long time ago might not. And something that was a long time ago might not seem like so long after all. So we start to see through the illusion of the perception of time. But that's not what I'm going to talk about tonight. That's a whole other topic, which would be fun to talk about in and of itself. Rather, tonight I'm going to be talking about a very common question that comes up, especially among people who are not from Buddhist backgrounds and who are relatively new to Buddhism. By relatively, I mean in the first 10 years or so. But actually, even people who've been practicing for decades sometimes ask this question as well. And briefly, the question that comes up is the question, is everything karma? In other words, is everything that we are experiencing the result of karma? That's one side of this question. And two, is everything we do creating karma? So that's two sides of this question. This question, is everything karma? And usually when this question is posed as part of a larger Q&A, I usually will not give a direct answer. And the reason for that is because although it's possible to give a short, direct answer to these questions, that usually creates confusion. So it's useful to have a longer, more in-depth discussion of what exactly it is we're talking about when we talk about karma. First off, a couple minor linguistic things. The word karma itself literally means action. And it's commonly paired with the term vipaka, which means result. So karma is, properly speaking, karma is the action that we take, which produces a result, the result is called vipaka. So often these words come together, karma, vipaka. So karma is action, vipaka is result. And this is quite similar to the concept of causality. Cause and effect. Karma is cause, vipaka is effect. Though it's not a perfect correlation, but it's a very close correlation. So this does tie back to a central position in Buddhism, which goes all the way back to when the Buddha attained enlightenment. So the Buddha spoke about his enlightenment experience in a number of different ways. But one of the ways he normally spoke about it was that his enlightenment was a direct realization of the universality and invariability of causality, which in Pali is called ida paccayata. So ida paccayata literally means based on this condition. So ida means this, paccaya means condition. So ida paccayata means causality or conditionality, saying that every single thing without exception operates according to the laws of cause and effect. Every single phenomenon, with no exception, operates according to the principles of cause and effect. So the Buddha said that this was the central realization that he had for his enlightenment. Ida paccayata, which in Pali he describes it quite simply, which in translation he said, when this is, that is. With the arising of this, there is the arising of that. When this is not, that is not. With the ceasing of this, there is the ceasing of that. Or to put it perhaps a bit more simply, when this happens, that happens. When this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. It's a very simple principle. He's talking about the connection between things. If you turn on the stove, then it gets hot. When this happens, that happens. When you turn off the stove, it cools off. Very simple. We can understand this principle of cause and effect. And it's something that we see operating all throughout every moment of our lives. So in fact, it's a bit interesting then that what seems to be such a basic, common, and universally accepted principle was the core, earth-shattering, world-transcending realization that the Buddha had. And that's because most of us, although we tend to accept the principle of causality in an ordinary, everyday sense, we don't realize how deep it goes. We don't realize that it penetrates right to the heart of conscious experience. So we only take it on the surface level. If I say rude things to Ayasoma, then she will be mad at me. That's a very surface level understanding of causality. It's an accurate one, but it's very superficial. The Buddha's realization of causality went much deeper than that. So the Buddha clearly saw that all things, without exception, are interrelated. This follows naturally. So if everything operates according to cause and effect, then that means that every effect has a preceding cause. And every cause has a subsequent effect. Or to put it, again, in terms of karma, every action that we take produces a corresponding result. And every result that we're experiencing is based upon a preceding action. This is inescapable. And again, what's interesting about this is that when the Buddha realized the absolute universality of this principle, that was what set in motion his full enlightenment. So clearly this is not something simplistic, but rather it's something which can penetrate right to the core of our self-attachment and split it apart. So this question then, is everything karma? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Fortunately, the answer is yes. Depending on how you look at it, this is either really good news or really bad news. But from a Buddhist standpoint, it's actually phenomenally good news. First off, by the way, I should also point out, although most of us probably accept causality to some degree or another, This was not a universally accepted belief at the time of the Buddha. In fact, there were several different common philosophical and religious standpoints at the time of the Buddha, and the Buddha argued with many of the people who uphold these various positions. So we see quite a number of suttas where the Buddha argues against predeterminism, for example. So a couple common suttas on the subject of predeterminism. Actually, both of them I'm planning to talk about sooner or later during sutta study. One of the more well-known ones that gets brought up is the Sivaka Sutta, so Samyutta Nikaya 36.21, in which someone, actually a wanderer named Molya Sivaka, goes to the Buddha and asks, he says, so a lot of other people say that everything we experience is predetermined. What do you say? And the Buddha says, well, I don't say that. And the Buddha goes on to say that, well, some things that we experience are the result of illness in the body, physical disorders of various sorts. Some of what we experience is the result of changes in the weather and the seasons. Some of what we experience is the result of overexertion, of not taking care of your body properly. And some of what we experience is the direct result of karma. So that's one case where the Buddha dismantles the idea of predeterminism and also introduces the concept that our experiences are in some way related to karma. And people then sometimes use that sutta to say that, well, not everything is karma. No, because the result of karma is only one of the I think, 8 things that the Buddha lists. But when we look at other suttas, we find that each of the other things on the list also come from karma. So physical disorders, in the Chulakama Vibhanga Sutta, the Buddha clearly states that physical disorders arise from past karma, arises from what we've done in past lives or earlier in this life. Similarly, with things resulting from not taking care of your body properly. Well, that's karma. We made the choice to not take care of our body, and as a result, we get unpleasant sensations. So this is one case of a sutta where the Buddha is actually quite clearly saying that everything is the result of karma. Yet, ironically, when this sutta is taken out of the context of the rest of the suttas, it's sometimes used to justify the opposite position. There's another sutta, my mind is blanking off the top of my head. Titayatana Sutta, standpoints of other religions. This is one where the Buddha actually singles out 3 particular harmful, wrong views that were held by other religions, other spiritual traditions at the time. The first one was predeterminism. So again, this idea that our choices don't actually have any consequence, that there's no free will. This idea that we only have the illusion of free will, because actually everything is predetermined. So there also the Buddha dismantles that viewpoint, points out that it's contrary to our actual experience, and that somebody who believes that will not place any value in morality. He won't place any stock in the importance of being careful what we do. The other 2 viewpoints that he dismantles in that sutta, the second one is the belief that everything we experience is determined by a creator deity, like some kind of God, all-powerful God. That also the Buddha points out, he's like, well, if that was the case, then that would mean that it was that God which dictates all of your actions, which also means that you have no free will and therefore won't be at all interested in morality, won't be at all interested in spiritual practice. It destroys any opportunity for awakening if one takes on that viewpoint. And the third viewpoint he dismantles in that sutta is the belief that everything is random, that there's no causes, no conditions, that there's no causality at all. And again, the Buddha rejects the idea that there's no causality. He rejects the idea that things happen randomly and chaotically. Again, pointing out that if one holds that belief, then one will not actually bother with practicing morality, concentration, and wisdom, because there would be no point. There'd be no point in doing anything. There's also a very amusing sutta where a Brahmin comes to the Buddha and says, well, it's my belief that nobody actually has the ability to do anything at all. So basically, again, positing a view of fatalism or predeterminism. And there the Buddha is just points out directly how absurd that is. He's just like, you came here of your own free will, and you're telling me that there's no free will? And then he goes through in similar vein. He's like, how could you possibly have this viewpoint? You put forth the energy to come here, and you claim it's impossible to put forth energy. You made an effort to come and argue with me that it's impossible to make effort. So the Buddha clearly rejected this idea that everything was predetermined, this idea that free will is an illusion. And he also clearly rejected this idea that the universe is not causal. Instead, once again, the core of his realization was that absolutely everything without exception is completely ruled by causality. But that within that, we make choices. And those choices have consequences. Those choices produce results. And this is very important for the practicing of the spiritual life, because it means that we can make choices which lead to the arising of samadhi. We can make choices which lead to the arising of wisdom. We can make choices which lead to experiencing supportive conditions. A while back, I gave a talk about ideal conditions, how we can create the ideal conditions for our spiritual practice. And much of that actually comes from what we would call mundane good karma, being kind to others, being generous, being compassionate, being caring, being considerate. All of this is creating actions, karma, which results in the consequences of having supportive conditions, the consequences of being healthy, of having enough food to eat, of having enough free time, of having the opportunity to encounter the Dhamma, the opportunity to practice well. So the Buddha really clearly emphasizes this, that yes, everything is ruled by cause and effect. Everything is ruled by causality. And every single moment we have the free will to make whatever choices we want. So he's clearly showing how the law of karma vipaka is not an excuse to reject the idea of free will. So it's not this rigid, inflexible structure of predeterminism. And it opens up the path to awakening. It gives us the opportunity to create the conditions, the causes and conditions which lead to awakening. So there's a number of misapplications of these principles, though. So one example of this is encountering somebody who is experiencing misfortune. Maybe they have a disability of some kind, or maybe they're being mistreated or discriminated against. And you say, oh, well, that's just their bad karma. Too bad for them. It's their own fault. That would be a misapplication of this. And the reason why that's a misapplication, well, first off, you're creating bad karma by not displaying compassion, by not doing anything to help that person who's experiencing misfortune. You're creating further bad karma for yourself. The second error in this misapplication of karma is that it's not recognizing the finite nature of karma. So, for example, I have an ongoing digestive disorder. I've had it for most of my life. It's a result of past karma. I can't escape that. But I also know that it is finite. Eventually, that will run out. Eventually, that bad karma will run out, will be exhausted. And I know that as long as I create good karma, conditions for positive health in the future, then eventually that will be what I experience. So it's subject to change. It's subject to shifting and morphing, and shifting and morphing through deliberate choice. So if we encounter someone who's currently experiencing some kind of misfortune, that does not define that person. It's just the temporary manifestation of some finite piece of karma. So is it the manifestation of karma? Yes, it is. There's no escaping this. But it does not define that person, and it does not limit that person. In fact, it may not in any way reflect that person's current state of mind. There's an interesting sutta where, I believe it's the Mahakamavibhanga Sutta, if I recall correctly. There's a sutta where someone comes to the Buddha and says, how is it that somebody who, although they did good deeds in a past life, they experienced misfortune in this life? Or, although they did bad deeds in a past life, they experienced good fortune in this life. And the Buddha's answer is that, simply put, we're not looking back far enough. That the results of karma are sometimes delayed. They don't always take result immediately. He says that karma can take a result immediately, or it can take a result in one's next life, or it can take result in some life after that. In other words, the effects of karma can be delayed by many lives. So somebody in this life may be extremely moral and virtuous and kind and generous, and yet they seem to experience a lot of misfortune and disaster. Well, that might be coming from many lifetimes ago. It might be some residual consequence of something they did 100 eons ago. But it doesn't reflect upon their current character. Their current character may be completely spotless and pure. There's a number of cases in the suttas, even of enlightened beings experiencing mistreatment, illness, and disaster of various sorts after their enlightenment. And that was the residual karma from what they had done prior to attaining awakening. Those last few seeds which still had to express their result. So what the principles of karma and vipaka are presenting is a perfectly balanced multiverse, a perfectly balanced reality, where every action has a corresponding reaction. Every cause has a corresponding effect. And in terms of our direct experience, this is something that we can see. In the short term, we can see how the choices that we make produce short-term results. We can see how they also produce long-term results. And we can extrapolate how they might produce very long-term results. So again, if I am rude to Ayasoma, I notice the immediate results of discomfort in my mind. I notice the short-term results of her not being very happy with me. I notice long-term results of creating disharmony in the Sangha and a bad reputation for myself and ongoing experience of remorse and so on. And I can extrapolate the very long-term results of how this might manifest in future experiences and possibly in future lives. And again, applying this in terms of the mind. So during the meditation, I pointed out that the experience of the body is entirely within the mind. So ultimately, all of our experience is mental. All of our experience is within the mind. So it's also something that the Buddha pointed out. So in the Dhammapada, the Buddha starts off by saying, Manopo Bhangama Dhamma Mano Seta Mano Maya. So all things are led by the mind. The mind is the most powerful of all things, the best of all things. And all things are created by the mind. So the Buddha is very clear that the fundamental bedrock of all reality is mind. The fundamental bedrock of all experience is mind. It's not body. It's not physicality. Bodies and physical experiences are just one form of mental experience, one color, one shade of mental experience. So within the domain of the mind, we can see how we create our own experiences. And we can see how what we've done with our mind in the past constantly returns to us, constantly crops up as patterns and tendencies of mind. Again, this is very clear in meditation practice. We see how whatever we've been thinking about during the day keeps reappearing during our meditation. Whatever we've habitually and frequently been thinking about for the past few weeks or months or years keeps reappearing in our meditation, keeps coming back to us over and over again. So then it's quite reasonable to see how whatever we've been doing with our mind in the past contributes to the shaping of our present mental experience. And whatever we're currently doing with our mind contributes to the shaping of our future mental experiences. And since everything is mental experience, everything is mind, we can naturally see then how the choices we make shape our bodies, shapes our physical experiences, which once again are simply a variety of mental experience. Particular type of mental experiences. So the other important thing to emphasize through this is that the Buddha also recognized the impersonal nature of karma, the impersonal nature of causality. It's not about me, it's not about you. It's simply about the chain of cause and effect. The chain of cause and effect rolls on regardless of who we think we are or who we don't think we are. The chain of cause and effect rolls on regardless of who gets enlightened or who doesn't get enlightened. The chain of cause and effect rolls on because that's the nature of samsara. The nature of samsara is this infinite link of cause and effect and cause and effect and cause and effect. That's its nature. That's what it is. The error that we make is that we think this is me, this is mine, this is who I am. I am this karma. I am this result. I am this effect. I am this condition. I am this circumstance. This is who I am. This defines me. This is my nature. That's the error that we make. We think that we are defined by our karma. And therefore, we define ourselves in terms of our karma. But in actuality, it's simply the clockwork manifestation of the universe. It's just that rolling wheel of cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. There's no me to be found anywhere in that. Whatever we identify as me is gone in the next moment. But the wheel rolls on. And the choices that we make create results. And as long as we keep identifying as this process of karma, we will continue to be trapped by it. We'll continue to be caught up in it. So whatever identity of body and mind we have is simply the current link in that chain of causality. And we identify as that particular link. So when it moves on to the next link in the chain, we think, well, that must be me. And it goes on to the next link, well, that must be me. And it goes on to the next link, and well, that must be me. But actually, none of it is me. None of it is you. It's just the impersonal operation of a perfectly balanced clockwork universe. That's all. There's nothing personal about it at all. So is everything karma? Yeah, it is. And that's why we can attain awakening. That's why it's possible. If things were random, chaotic, non-causal, non-conditional, it would be hopeless. There would be no practice to be done. It would be completely beside the point. And actually, again, there were some non-Buddhist teachers at the time of the Buddha who taught that it didn't matter what you did. You just had to wait. And at some point, if you were lucky, enlightenment would just randomly happen to you, completely randomly. The Buddha rejected that viewpoint, of course. There were other teachers who said that there was no such thing as karma and also no such thing as enlightenment. You could do whatever you wanted and it didn't matter because you wouldn't get any consequences for it. It didn't matter because there was no enlightenment to be had regardless. The Buddha rejected that view as well. Both of these views, he said, were completely counterproductive, and that one who holds such views will never attain awakening. They'll simply generate more bad karma, which will result in yet more suffering and disaster. So, on the contrary, by adopting the view that our actions are effective and produce results, and that every single choice we make matters, every single thing we do without exception matters. Every choice of body, speech, and mind matters. Every viewpoint, every standpoint, every opinion, every belief matters because that is generating causal momentum, which shapes our experience. When we take that viewpoint, then we realize that every single moment we are either creating the conditions for awakening or not. Every moment we're either stepping towards enlightenment or away from it. That's it. And this leads into another important issue of karma, another point where aspects of the Buddha's teachings get misapplied in order to excuse misconduct, which is around the issue of intention. So karma, of course, means action, but the Buddha specified that by that he meant intentional action. So what we do on purpose, what is fueled by volition. And he did this to counteract the viewpoint commonly held by the Nigantas, which later came to be called the Jains, who held the viewpoint that even accidental actions had consequences. So the Buddha was clear. Intentional actions have consequences. However, the Buddha was also clear that negligence is extreme bad karma. Heedlessness is extreme bad karma. Ignorance is extreme bad karma. Delusion is extreme bad karma. Wrong view is extreme bad karma. And a lack of mindfulness is bad karma. A lack of consideration is bad karma. And to not do what should be done is bad karma. In other words, even inaction is karmically potent. Even non-activity is karmically potent. Actually, the meditation practice that we were doing a few minutes ago is a form of non-action, a form of non-activity, but it's a form of non-action that is very powerful good karma. Whereas to stand by and do nothing while somebody else is oppressed in front of your eyes, that is a form of non-action that is very bad karma. To know that you have the ability to help others and to choose not to do anything is bad karma. There's no escaping this. To intentionally do nothing when you have the power to do good is bad karma. Creates harmful conditions for yourself in the future. Willful ignorance. Similarly, bad karma. To perform actions based on willful ignorance is bad karma. To not pay careful attention to what we're doing means that we might cause harm. Therefore, it's bad karma. To act without considering whether our actions are harmful or helpful, is bad karma. So, of course, these are more subtle forms of bad karma than things like torturing your grandmother. And torturing your grandmother is pretty extreme bad karma. By contrast, doing nothing while somebody else is tortured in front of you is less severe, but it's still clearly bad karma. So, to do nothing, to say nothing, to express no disapproval at the mistreatment of others is bad karma. So we need to be really careful what we do. And we also need to be very careful what we don't do. We need to be very careful what we justify in action. Because then we might find that when we're in trouble, nobody steps in to help us. When we're the targets, nobody stands up for us. Is that what we want to experience? Is that the world we want to live in? A world where nobody cares about our own mistreatment? Is that what we want? I don't think so. So is everything karma? Yes, it is. And that's not a good thing and it's not a bad thing. It's just the way things are. And when we come to terms with it, then the path to awakening opens up. When we accept this fact, self-pity dissolves, fades away. Self-hatred disappears. Conceit disappears. Arrogance disappears. And wrong view melts away. And the path to awakening becomes clear. Which is why this was the linchpin of the Buddha's awakening. This was what finally burned away the last vestiges of delusion and misunderstanding in the Bodhisattva's mind. This realization of the invariability of karma, the universality of karma. So those are my thoughts on the subject. So at this time, if there's any questions or comments, now's your time to ask. So all those times you've asked questions about karma and I said, not now, there's not enough time. Well, now's your time. So let's have some discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And welcome to all the new friends joining in. There's a couple comments and questions. Maitreya T asks, if someone buys lottery tickets or gamble in casinos, which precept is he breaking?
So gambling is not actually one of the 8 precepts, but it is considered a form of wrong livelihood. So it fits under the Noble Eightfold Path. Depending on the severity of it, it ranges from very mild bad karma. Like if you just buy a lottery ticket once a year, that's pretty mild. Who cares, seriously? Are you generating a little tiny dab of bad karma? Yeah, you probably are. But it's so minute. But a gambling addict who burns through all their savings and all their family's savings and all their friends' savings and completely waste their life while causing harm to everyone around them, that's quite a bit worse. So yeah, the Buddha did identify gambling as something that we should not do, something we should avoid. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter.
And another question from Maitreya T was, if someone invests in shares of alcohol, casino, and tobacco firms, is that leading to bad karma?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do not invest in anything destructive, anything associated with wrong livelihood, anything associated with harming living beings, anything associated with intoxicants or poisons. Don't invest in those things. Yeah, that's definitely bad karma. Anything else?
Sarah says, are you still considered a Buddhist if you don't believe in past lives? Did the Buddha teach both spiritual and secular Buddhist philosophy?
So, to answer your second question, no, the Buddha did not teach secular Buddhist philosophy. That's a contemporary invention, which is blatantly contrary to the Buddha's teachings. So, in my opinion, secular Buddhism should not be called Buddhism because it's not. As for your first question, can you be a Buddhist without believing in karma? Well, it depends on how you define the word Buddhist. There's also stages in the development of one's Buddhist practice. So, for example, you might say that you are embarking on Buddhist practice, but you're still doubtful about this whole karma thing. You're open to the possibility that it might be true, you're just not sure yet. If you say that, then yeah, you can still call yourself Buddhist. But if you say, I absolutely believe that karma is definitely not true and there's no such thing as rebirth, if you say that, that's much more problematic. So the traditional definition of a Buddhist is one who takes refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So taking refuge in Buddha means that you're going to value the awakened ones. You're going to value enlightenment. Taking refuge in Dhamma means that you're going to take the teachings of enlightened beings very seriously and really try to understand them. So the teachings on karma and rebirth are central to Buddhism and manifest in everything the Buddha taught. So to abjectly, flatly refute and deny karma is meaning that you're not taking refuge in Dhamma. It means that you reject Dhamma. That is much more problematic if you want to define yourself as Buddhist. You can define yourself as Buddhish, in that you have some characteristics of Buddhism, some characteristics of a Buddhist. But if you abjectly, flatly reject karma and rebirth, then I'm sorry, I would not define you as a Buddhist. Sorry.
Okay. And Amaranta says, the Buddha explains why we shouldn't invest or work in certain activities or participate in certain activities that can damage us and damage others, which are based in ignorance.
Correct, yeah.
And we also have a comment or a question from Robin. Do our choices also have causes?
So I would say that the conditions under which we make choices, those conditions are the result of our past causes. So, for example, a predator, someone who was born as a predator, an obligate carnivore predator, such as a cat, their choices are very limited. In order to survive, they have almost no option except to kill other living beings. So that is the result of past bad karma. Having very limited choices in that way is the result of past bad karma. What they do with their life is still up to them, and they can still generate good karma by making the best choices that are available to them. But it is true that sometimes, as the result of our past bad karma, that we have very limited options. And those limited options are sometimes a choice between bad and worse. And in that case, you do the best you can, while also recognizing that you don't want to cause harm. You want to cause the least harm you can, but that you're faced with very difficult choices, and that's not always a clear choice for you. So this is the case. But keep in mind that we still are making conscious, intentional choices within those conditions. Okay.
And Gabriella has a question. Good to see you, Gabriella. If everything is karmically based, then how do you unmake karma? The Buddha said in Body of Deeds, Salt Crystal Sutta and Sutta of the Conch Horn, if all karma is experienced as it was created, the holy life can't be lived. As such, you can't awaken if there's no end to karma. So I want to know the way to eliminate karma properly, if it can be eliminated.
Yeah, so again, the way to escape the cycle of karma is to abandon self identity. What keeps us trapped in samsara, so samsara is the causal realm. What keeps us trapped in samsara is self identity. We believe, I am this, I am that, this is me. Since we have that belief, we are stuck in samsara, and therefore we're stuck in the cycle of karma. So abandoning self-identity is the only way to escape the cycle of karma. So that's what defines an awakened being. They no longer identify as anything in samsara, therefore they're no longer trapped in samsara. They're no longer trapped in karma. Okay?
Okay. And Bhavani has a question. Namaste. Is it okay to avoid people who destroy my good karma practice knowingly without hurting them back? But if I do so, do I still have to encounter them in my rebirth? For example, the human population is increasing. Is it because lower realm beings are doing good karma?
Another interpretation would be it's because higher realm beings are doing bad karma. So I wouldn't be too quick to jump to conclusions on that one. But regarding the first part of your question, if being around certain people means that you're more likely to make bad choices, then yes, by all means, it is the right choice to avoid those people. There is nothing anywhere in the Dhamma that I'm aware of which says that we are required to be around certain people. The closest the Buddha comes to that is saying that we should look after our parents. That's it. Nowhere else does he say, if your friend is an evil jerk who inspires you to make bad choices, you must spend time with them anyway. The Buddha never says that. On the contrary, he says, avoid evil friends. Avoid friends who might tempt you to do bad things. So yeah, if somebody tempts you to abandon the path of good karma, don't spend time with that person. It's not worth it. As for the increase of the human population, pay it no mind. It's irrelevant. Keep in mind that there are countless universes, countless worlds, countless human worlds, not just this one. So people might die and need a place to be reborn as a human. And if there's no opportunity on this world, it'll just be on another world where there's humans. So there's no shortage of places to experience any kind of rebirth. Samsara doesn't have a shortage of options when it comes to rebirth. There's plenty of options. Besides which, once again, it's all generated by the mind. People tend to overlook this. They get too caught up in this idea of physical limitations. It's all generated by the mind anyway. This idea of physical limitations is also just something generated by the mind. So the world is not finite. It can't be spoken of in that way. Okay.
And Victor says, some say eating meat is not considered bad karma, but if we order meat, the animal is getting killed. So is it considered bad karma?
I would say that to buy meat or to ask for meat is in fact generating bad karma. Relatively small, but nonetheless, it is generating bad karma. Except in the case of extreme medical necessity, which cannot be treated in any other way. So this actually relates back to the earlier question where somebody asked about conditions. Are the conditions for our choices the result of past bad karma? And the answer is yes. If you have a body which can only be properly taken care of by eating meat, that is the result of past bad karma. Because it means that you cannot have a completely karmically pure diet. That's unfortunate. But in that case, you do the best you can. Limit your intake of meat as much as possible and try to source meat which has been produced as ethically as possible. So trying to make the best you can of unfortunate circumstances. But that's actually quite rare. The vast majority of humans can get by perfectly fine on a vegetarian diet. Very, very few humans really need to eat meat of any sort. But there are such beings, and once again, that's the result of past bad karma. So then in that case, once again, we make a vow to not create more bad karma. And within the limited options that we have, we choose the most morally pure one we can find. This is what leads the mind higher and higher, is of the bad choices that we have, we pick the most pure. Then the mind will only trend upwards. Okay?
Cows Are Friend says, currently we're going through a pandemic. Most people are affected in some way, in a way that's very interconnected. Is our misfortune the result of individual bad actions in the past?
Yep. Once again, there's no getting around this. The bright side of this, by the way, is that also the good fortune we're experiencing is the result of our choices in the past. That also can't be gotten around. Right now, there's a lot of nice people living at this monastery. It's great. I like all of them. They're really nice people. Very pleasant to live with. That's the result of past karma. Isn't that lovely? Our own good choices lead to this good experience. Isn't that lovely? Helps encourage us to keep making good choices. Okay.
And Johnny, as well as Miguel, have the same question, which is, can you speak on family karma or collective karma? Is there collective karma?
Well, I mean, you'd have to define your terms. A number of people have used the term collective karma, but I've never actually been completely clear on what they mean by that. The way the Buddha spoke about karma, he seemed to be pretty clear that he was talking about individual karma. At least we experience it as individual karma. My own opinion is that the appearance of collective karma is simply the confluence of many people's individual karma. That's my own opinion on the matter. But I can also see ways where one could speak about collective karma without transgressing what the Buddha taught. But I don't like to speak in that way because it gets messy and it's very easy to create misunderstandings. The viewpoint of individual karma is much, much clearer and is less likely to create misunderstandings and wrong view. As for family karma, it is worth keeping in mind that although the Buddha said that we do owe a deep debt of gratitude to our parents, no matter how bad they were, we owe a deep debt of gratitude to them. The Buddha also stated that every single person we encounter has at some point been our mother, our father, our sister, our brother, our daughter, our son, our dog, our cat, everything imaginable. Our wife, our husband, our everything you can imagine. So there's actually nothing that special about your karmic connection with your relatives because everybody has been one of your relatives at some point. Nonetheless, there is still some connection. And the Buddha did say that we should make an effort to repay our parents' kindness. And the way he said we should repay their kindness is if their morality is weak, help them strengthen their morality. If their samadhi is weak, help them strengthen their samadhi. If their wisdom is weak, help them strengthen their wisdom. This is how you repay your parents. Okay?
And Mark asks, sorry not to sound glib, but could someone theoretically keep making good karma and essentially live quite happily in samsara, New Ager's belief system?
Oh, yeah, it's possible. In fact, you can keep that up for indefinitely in theory. In actuality, what tends to happen is after a few eons, we get comfortable and we start making mistakes, and then things start slipping downhill. And before you know it, you wind up back in unpleasant conditions. But yeah, you can remain in the heaven side of samsara for hundreds of billions of years, hundreds of billions of eons if you want to. Um, but why would you want to? You've done that before. It didn't bring you any lasting benefit. Mm. But yeah, in theory, you can just keep doing good deeds and not do any bad deeds, and you'll experience only pleasant conditions. However, you will still experience a subtle form of dukkha, subtle form of dissatisfaction and discontent that runs through all of that. And that's the dukkha of clinging to a sense of self when there is no self. A dukkha of believing in a permanent, ongoing self entity when there is no such thing to be found. So there's a really amusing sutta. Actually, it comes up a few places, but there's one in particular where the Buddha talks about devas, so angels or demigods who are living this incredibly pleasant, enjoyable life, very comfortable with their seemingly endless, pleasant life. And then they hear a Buddha teaching about impermanence and not self, and they're suddenly struck with terror. They're like, oh, this pleasure that I thought was permanent is actually not permanent. This being that I thought was me is actually not self. What I thought was mine will be lost. What I thought was me will be destroyed. And they become distraught. So that's dukkha arising from delusion. So that's the subtle dukkha that runs through all of samsara. Even the nice parts of samsara have this subtle sense of wrongness to them, subtle sense of discomfort, which comes from that dukkha of delusion. That dukkha of seeing the impermanent as permanent and seeing the impersonal as personal. Okay.
Gabriella says, attempting to fathom karma is said to drive people to utter madness. And if it is so fundamental to the wisdom of awakening, then how do we learn about it in depth without losing our minds? Why is there a danger of losing our minds in the first place?
What the Buddha actually said was that a full understanding of the workings of karma is only accessible to awakened beings. That's what he said. And he said that a unawakened being who tries to fathom the full details of the workings of karma will either reap disappointment or go crazy. Disappointment is more common, to be perfectly honest. But he was also quite clear that we can come to a basic understanding of karma. It's the deep, thorough, complete workings of karma in all its minute subtleties, which is only accessible to the mind of an awakened being. So that's the difference. The Buddha did emphasize that it's important to have at least a general basic understanding of karma, because that's part of right view. You don't actually need to know all the subtle, minute workings of it in order to practice the path to awakening. And when you attain awakening, then you will know all the subtle, minute, precise details of karma. So that's more what I see him getting at, is he's like, well, do you have enough understanding to have right view and practice for awakening? Well, that's good enough. Don't get too caught up in the details, because you're going to know all those details when you get awakening anyway. So don't worry about it just yet. That's my take on why the Buddha spoke in that way. Okay?
Okay. Causer friend says, when someone hurts someone else, is one producing bad karma and the other experiencing the result of their own bad karma?
So first off, just a time check. We're running low on time. But briefly, yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple other questions.
Can we answer them very quickly, or are they things
Sure.
that require long answers?
I think you can do it. Well, first says Sarah says, "Thank you for your honesty in answering my questions." It was the question about believing in past lives and traditional versus spiritual Buddhism. I have to admit, I felt as though your response was gatekeeping. Isn't compassion and intention at the heart of Buddhism as opposed to these beliefs? Regardless, I understand you believe strongly in traditional Buddhism, and I thank you for these excellent talks.
So I don't know what you mean by gatekeeping. So someone would have to explain to me what that term means. Um, and yes, compassion are most certainly a critical aspect of Buddhist practice. Um, and again, if you want to practice some elements of Buddhism, then you'll get some benefit from it. But if you want to attain the full benefits of Buddhism, then you'll need the full package. But that's okay. If you only want partial benefits, that's fine. No pressure. Maybe in a few billion lifetimes, you'll change your mind. But for now, if you just want a little bit of the package, that's okay. No problem. May it bring you happiness and joy.
Patrika says, talking about Sri Lanka having the largest meat processing center, will it affect the country and its people with bad karma having it there?
Only the people who are directly involved with it. If you just happen to be living in Sri Lanka, that's not bad karma. In fact, that's phenomenally good karma. So, as somebody living in a non Buddhist country, let me tell you, it's definitely the result of bad karma. Okay.
And there's only two more. One is from Chandrasekhar, who says, what's the difference between karma theory of Hinduism and Buddhism? Keeping in mind that Hinduism has used karma to exploit others in the caste system.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not familiar enough with Hinduism to answer that question. I'm familiar with Buddhism, but I'm not familiar enough with Hinduism.
And the final question is from Gabriella, who says, is there really any window of options of free will if sufficient ones are removed, aside from the bad ones?
Don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe if you can rephrase, Gabriella.
You said that all of our experience is in the mind. Is this the same mind that is synonymously translated as heart?
Yeah.
All right. Don't have Gabriella's rephrase, so thank you everyone for joining in. Bhavani said she misses Ayasoma's heartfelt laughs.
Well, you'll just have to come for a residency at the monastery, and you can hear her laughs all the time.
It's true. And lots of thank yous from everyone else for your meaningful answers. Gabriella said, if all our choices are bad, then are they really choices? Probably referring to your conditions.
Yeah.
Good choices.
Again, that's like the case of an obligate carnivore predator. They don't really have any other choice except to kill living beings. So again, it's not the same as a human being who just decides they want to go out and kill deer just for the fun of it. An obligate carnivore predator, they don't have any other choice. That's their life. So are they still reaping some bad karma? In my opinion, yes, but very mild compared to the mind of a predator who's just doing it for fun, the hunter who's just doing it for fun. By contrast, the obligate predator, that's the only thing they can do. Otherwise, they just die. So it's much, much more mild karma.
Great. Well, thank you, Bhante, for your answers, the talk, and the meditation. And thanks everyone for joining in. You can join us tomorrow morning for some more sutta study at 8 a.m. New York City time. But for another talk at 7:30 p.m. New York City time. So we can end with 3 sadhus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And enjoy the rest of your night.